Hi, my name is Connie Davis, and this is my video for lesson 4.4, Creating a Lesson with a Protocol. And the protocol that I chose is Provocative Prompt. I chose that protocol because I wanted to improve my question asking abilities, and I wanted to get my students to have better in-class discussions. And I like this project because I feel like I can do it in both my seated class and my online class. And I would use this primarily in a introductory level chemistry class that I teach, which would be a class for students who have little or no chemistry background. And we would do this project midway through the semester. So because we're at the end of the semester now, I'm not going to be able to try it, but I do intend to use this next semester in both of the classes. So the students will start with an introduction, and it'll explain what it means to be endangered, and then the fact that there are some elements on the periodic table that can be considered endangered. So this is a page that I created for the introduction, and it has the learning objectives, and then it just gives a brief explanation of what they're going to be doing. So in the first part of the project, they're going to be doing a discussion that will help them to understand what it means for an element to be endangered. And then in the second part, they'll choose their own endangered element, and they will do some research and then share what they have in a class discussion. So the way I have the module set up is that they have to go through it in sequential order, and they can't do one thing without doing the previous item. And so this is the first discussion. It's how can an element be considered endangered? Because we think of animals and plants as being endangered, but we don't often think of elements as being endangered. So the prompt that I used is this question. It says, the law of conservation of matter says that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. If that is the case, then how can an element be endangered? And I really want them to think when they're answering this about, well, what does it mean for an element to be endangered? And so I included some resources that they can look up. They don't have to look these up. They can use their textbook. They can use any or all of these resources. But basically, when they do, what they're going to find out is that when we consider an element endangered, it doesn't mean that it's going extinct or that it's not going to be around anymore. It just means it's not going to be around in a usable form. Partly because a lot of the elements that we use for things like cell phones do not get recycled and just end up getting thrown away. So they'll answer this question, and then they will have to read and respond to the posts of 3 other students. Now, in my seated class, I would probably give them this assignment previously, either online or in a previous day's lecture, and then the next day when they came to class, they would discuss their answers and then share them with the rest of the class. So there's a couple of ways that I could do this. In my online class, it would be done solely as an online discussion. In my seated class, it would be done as more than likely as an in-class discussion. So then after they answer that discussion, the next thing that they're going to have to do is choose an element from the periodic table, and it'll be one that's in orange or yellow or red, one of the endangered elements that they want to research. And then they'll submit their choice. I've created a text box. This is an assignment, and so they will submit their choice. I will approve their choice and give them 5 points, and that's how they'll know it's approved. Or I'll deny it and they'll have to choose something else. And the reason that I have them do this ahead of time is because I don't want more than one student in a class to be researching the same element. There are plenty of elements that they can choose from, plenty that are in danger of running out. And so each student will choose a different element. And it's first come, first served, so the ones who submit first will get the first choices. And I usually do stress that too. I'd probably send an announcement that would stress that. So once they get their 5 points, and I set this so that they can't continue until they get the 5 points, they have to get the 5 points for this assignment, then they can go into the discussion. So this is the final discussion for the project. And I forgot to point this out, but there are some general discussion forum rules. I have a page of those. This won't be the first discussion that they do, so they'll already be familiar with the rules and the way that the discussions are graded. And so then they'll have to answer questions on the elements that they've chosen, and they'll have to do some research. I've asked them to get at least 2 sources and to include links to those sources. And then they will have to include at least 1 picture or graphic. If this is for my seated class, what I may have them do is create a PowerPoint, perhaps do these presentations in class, and then we'll discuss them. Or I may have them view the presentations online, depending on how much class time we have, and then we can discuss them in the next class. But for my online class, they will answer these questions in the form of a discussion post, and then they will read the posts of 4 other students, because the real purpose of doing this, or part of the purpose of doing this, is so that they learn something about some of the elements, not just the one that they chose to research. So after that, they'll essentially be done with the project, except to fill out a project survey. And the project survey is just a couple of questions so that I can assess how my students felt about the project. So it says, did your project further your understanding of how elements are used in your everyday life? One problem that I have, not a problem, but one issue in chemistry is that a lot of students can't see how it applies to their everyday life. So I'm always in class trying to think of ways that I can show students how it will apply. And I hope that once they're learning about the different uses and different things that might be in something like their cell phone or their smart TV or their computer, or different elements that are used for things that they didn't even realize, that they've learned something. And then I asked them to state one way that the availability of an element can be extended, because that's one takeaway that they should have gotten from this project. And then the third thing is to just tell me one thing they learned from doing the project. And I only included 3, but I may include a 4th question that just gives me some general feedback. So that way I can tell whether how the students felt about doing the project. So I'm going to go back to the module so you can again see the overview of it. And this is again, I would call it the Endangered Element Project. And I set it up as a standalone module. And again, it would be somewhere in the middle of the course, when we've already gone over elements, talked about the periodic table already, so they would have a background in elements and compounds. And that is the end of the lesson that I created. Thank you.